Welcome to the Business and Interiors podcast, the place where the world of interior design meets the essence of business success. I'm your host, David Del Greco, alongside my co-host, Cinzia Moretti of the award-winning Moretti Interior Design Studio. Our mission is to help interior designers run, streamline, and grow their business with confidence. In this podcast, we dive into the professional journeys and personal stories of some of the most inspiring interior designers and creative entrepreneurs. Each episode offers a glimpse into the strategies and experiences that have helped shape their business in this ever-evolving industry. So tune in, get inspired, and join us as we uncover the stories behind the design.
Join us today is Verity Coleman, the creative force behind Rascal and Roses Interior Design Studio, known for its bold use of color, pattern, and statement pieces. They're specializing in quirky period properties, and Verity brings a contemporary touch to a traditional country style. Verity, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, lovely to have you here.
It's a pleasure. Verity, first question we ask so every guest. What's your journey in interior design? How did you start?
Yeah, not a straightforward route, I would suggest, but maybe not. So before I became an interior designer, I was an army officer. So I was in the British Army for 12 years, retired, as you do from the army, retired as a major just after I'd had my children. So I'd had both my children. And so interior design wasn't probably necessarily on the cards for me, certainly before I joined the army. And before joining the army, I had a degree in politics. So I did politics and economics at university. So again, not very interior design related. But here, kind of 10 years later, here we find ourselves very much in the interior design space. So not a straightforward route. So I wouldn't say, I think probably stumble is more accurate. Once I had my daughter, and my husband and I were both serving the army. I was on maternity leave, and it became quite apparent to me when my husband was actually away in Afghanistan that the likelihood of us both being able to continue in the army was pretty limiting with a family. It's just almost impossible. We were both, having to travel a lot and be away. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to do something else. In the army, I was staff personnel support, so supported every kind of unit in the British Army in getting troops, looking after their troops, essentially. Yeah. So I knew I had to look for something else. I was also doing accountancy within the army, so I was doing management accountancy. So really, I should have just gone into management accountancy. That would have been the straightforward route. But I didn't fancy it, and I didn't want to do it. And I thought, if I'm going to leave the army, I have to do something I really want to do. And so I started just very, so I had, a newborn really. And I was making lampshades and painting furniture. Okay, but not in a way that I would have been able to make a living from it. Mm-hmm. And then I was very lucky because I had a very good friend whose mother ran a very successful curtain making business. And so I spoke to her and I said, look, I'm going to have to do something. And it started off me kind of going with her to measure houses and understanding the kind of window dressings business. And I guess I could have moved into that, but I have no patience or aptitude for making. That is quite apparent. I come from a family of makers. My mother's an amazing seamstress. My grandmothers both were. Not for me. I'm not patient enough or dedicated enough to learn that skill. And I knew if I started now, I would not be able to get up to speed on my own. It takes too much time. So I parked that idea, but she was very generous with her time, and having worked in the industry for, 30 years before I started, following her around, carrying her bags, I kind of realised that probably interior design was much more suited to my kind of skill set of project management. And, the bits outside the creative part were actually what interested me almost more than actual interiors, if that makes sense, to start with. So that was kind of the start of my journey. And I thought, right, well, I've got options here. We were moving around still at the time because my husband was still serving. Actually, at the time I was still serving when I kind of started. So I knew also realistically I wouldn't be able to get a job shadowing somebody, already established. So I knew early on, which, people ask all the time, would you advise setting up on your own? I probably not. It's not the best way of learning, but it was where I was at the time. And, it wasn't practical for me to be able to commit to someone because we were moving. Like, I think even since I had my daughter, then I had my son, but we were probably in 2, 3, 4 houses, during that kind of 3-year period. So that's how it happened, really.
So how did it develop?
So
everything started after that?
So that was kind of the very start.
Yeah.
That was 2012. Then I had my son in 2014, and during that time I was still in the army, so I went back to work. Then I went back again after my son. And then, it became even more apparent that being in the army definitely was not going to work for both of us. So my husband and I both left 2016. And by then I had some clients that I was working on, like on the side, but kind of full time, really. So I was working at my day job and then coming home and doing more work. And then we had to make a decision where we're going to live. So we moved to Hereford. And I then thought, right, well, I better throw myself into it and, make this work, really. So found some more clients, did some more things, sold some more stuff. and that was how it started, really, from there.
Did you study interior design?
So while I was still serving the army, I did every online course I could get my hands on. So if it was there and it was available, I would do it. Some of them paid for, some of them free. It was before a lot more stuff was available online. Now I think you can probably learn an awful lot from I'm sure podcasts were around then, but I wasn't listening to them. And I can't think of any real interior ones then. I'm sure I'm sure there were some, but I wasn't in that sphere. So I was just learning on the job with clients, but also, I was just anything I could get, any book that was available, I was reading it. Anything I could pick up from anyone is kind of everything. Yeah, all the things.
Sorry, did you want to start your own studio straight away, or were you thinking of working for someone else?
Well, I think, ideally I'd have loved to work for someone else, but I just knew at the start I didn't know where we were going to be living. So if we were in London, that would have been a really viable option. But in the end, we decided to go back to Herefordshire, which is where I grew up. And there are not many interior designers there, full stop, kind of a handful. And I just thought, realistically, it's going to be tricky, joining somewhere and being part of that. And the problem is, once I'd left the army, I got really used to being my own boss, which I quite enjoyed. Having spent a really long time not being my own boss. And I had young children still, and only one of them was at school. So I knew I had to fit it around that. And, working 9 till 5 was not going to work for us. And
seeing you as sex now, so you did actually took the right choice.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, luckily it worked out. It worked out
very
exactly.
well.
And I would say, actually, a big part of that as well was the BIID. So, I was desperate to kind of find somewhere where I could, learn and work out what I needed to do and what the proper, having not done a degree in it, I felt very much like I'd lost a massive, there was an information gap there. So I was very conscious that I wanted to, go with the most professional body. Like, how can I do this properly? Like, how can I pick up that advice? So quite early on, I think I found the BIID, and I think that really helped shape what it shows you is, what is good. What should we be doing? Best practice, what goes wrong? What are the risks? There were things that I just didn't even know were a risk. Before you see it, you don't know, do you? So, I would say also the BID really
So what was the first thing you have to learn?
Oh my gosh. What, in terms of me
running
personally?
The business, yeah.
Well, so the business side I really enjoyed, the actual information, business, money, accountancy side I love, because that really drives me as a person.
Already, right?
That's just, I think, innate in me. My parents were both self-employed. I've been around that environment a lot. But I think the bit I find hard was how you take what you want to offer in something like interior design. Once you realize how big the scope is, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want your day-to-day to look like? And I figured out quite early that I wanted to be I didn't want to just do a job because I had to do the job. I wanted to do projects that I really loved, and what did I love? And so I kind of went through that, and that's how we've ended up being, I think, specialists in kind of period properties, and people now find us, which is wonderful. But at the start, I think you have to go out and you have to say, we would love to do this, we'd love to help you do that. We still do stuff that isn't like that, and that's still, now we're able to fit that in because we can. But I think the first thing for setting up your business is really, what do you want it to look like? But what my business looks like now isn't what it looked like 12 years ago.
I guess many interior designers don't know exactly what they want. And they sometimes explore different
and I think you should do that.
paths,
and I think if you're able to take that risk and, accept that sometimes that's going to be not a bad decision, but sometimes you've got to explore to find out it's not what you want.
Even the design style that you want to have, or design philosophy, the type
100%.
of clients or the type of projects.
100%.
It takes time to learn what really resonates with you, right?
Yeah, because you don't know. And even if you do something and it's not what you like, I don't necessarily think that's a failing. That's just some information you've learned to move forward. So I think you've got to be more open to trying things and accepting that you've done it, and you might have done it well, but it just might not be what you want to do. Or you might do something and you might do it really badly, and that's also, you've got to accept that.
I think it's a journey to try and find your identity.
Yeah, definitely.
As a designer.
And where you want to sit, and what you like, and what people, sometimes you might not realize one of your skills is X, Y, or Z, and you might not know that until you've actually done it. And someone goes, that's amazing. We've really struggled to find someone that could do that. And you don't even know that, because especially if you're naturally good at something, you might have to have someone tell you that. If you work on your own,
of course.
How would you know?
I mean, your style is now very, what we said, very bold. So, you use quite a lot of colors, patterns, statement pieces.
Yeah.
What directed you?
Well,
that
so
way?
I was like, I like this, so this is what I'm going to show people. My mum's side of the family are Indian, Portuguese, so I'm used to being surrounded by a lot of colour. And I think, very early on, I was just drawn to that as a person and then as a designer. But I realised, it was interesting for me to realise that is not what everyone is drawn to. I just assume that's what everyone likes. Well, it turns out lots of people don't like that.
Well, I actually absolutely love colours and how we use them. So
exactly. So you do, but so many people, and especially in 2012, 2014, it was very much the kind of grey era. Everyone was.
Now it's the greyish.
And now we're going greyish, beige, but we were very then just grey. So in the last kind of 5 years now, colours come and is everywhere. I love it, and it's brilliant, and makes our job much easier, because before it was really hard to find things,
right?
Not find fabrics. Fabrics were always available, but accessories and lights and stuff like that. Even 6 years ago, everything was in grey or to go with grey. Now you can buy an orange lamp. Well, that was unheard of 10 years ago, I feel like. I'm sure it wasn't unheard of. I felt like it was unheard of.
You had to make them. You had to paint them.
Well, you had to paint them, or you had to really get someone to spec it. And, it was a bespoke finish, whereas now, much more accessible. Great. I'm hoping that will stay.
It's like when I was doing a kitchen with copper, and I couldn't find anything with copper. Now everywhere's copper.
Exactly.
So
good.
I hear
It's great. It's very good.
So this love colours that comes from your family, was it easy to adapt that to the period property? How did you show to the client your love for colours? Yeah,
it's tricky, because I think traditionally, especially with a period property, people assume it would be quite formal, and they are the architecture is formal, but actually, if you go back historically, the Georgians loved colour. Everything was bright. That colour palette of oranges and blues and greens and yellows, that is historic colours. And once you can convince a client of that and then show them, they just work so well. If you've got high ceilings and you've got picture rails and you've got, ornate architraving, yes, that bit we tend to do white, like in the more traditional, but you've got all that space below for colour. It just looks so good. And that's not to say that it doesn't look good in a neutral, because we've also done rooms in a neutral and they also look amazing. But, a period property can really take colour. And then in terms of, we do quite a lot of timber frame buildings where we are. There's a lot of them out in the countryside. And, wood works so well with colour. Like it sings, and sometimes we have to give people a bit of a push, but in general, we've never had a disaster where someone's walked in and gone, oh, what is this? What is this?
Do you think your design style has attracted clients?
Yeah, we're quite lucky now. I think because of things like social media, we're able to share, and on our website, we're able to put pictures. We get a lot of people say, oh, I've got a timber frame building and it's like this, but it's all off-white, would you be able to do this for us? And we're like, yes, we would, which is really good. So we're lucky that we have the ability to share that now and show people what is possible, which is great. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're very good at managing, so that was easy part.
I've done a lot of managing, yeah.
So when did you hire the first designer, or what was the first member of your team? Was it a designer? Or?
So, no, it was a designer, yeah. So so Jessie joined us first, and she was Herefordshire based and had approached me maybe 2 years beforehand and was like, oh, I'd really like to come and work for you. I've got a degree in interior design. And, her CV was brilliant. But I was like, I just don't know that we're in a position yet to bring you onto the team. I was worried, if I bring someone on, we hadn't been short of work, but just the pressure felt a lot to, have someone's livelihood in them, in my hands. If we can't, I'm going to have to pay you whatever. And so I kind of put Jessie off, and then a year later she came back, and then a year later she came back, and then I was like, okay, fine. I think now is the time. We should do this. So Jessie was my first full-time employee. So she was full-time, which was great. And that was kind of just before COVID, really. And then we had to obviously deal with that. But that was fine. And then quite shortly after Jessie, so admin-wise and kind of books-wise and kind of business side-wise, I was pretty happy with dealing with that. And I'm a bit of a control freak, so I felt like it would be very hard for me to hand that over.
Delegate.
And I just didn't. And also, I think the way the business was developing, there was going to be no decisions that I could just kind of pass over. My husband was quite heavily involved in the business then as well, like from that kind of strategic point of view. So I felt like we probably had that covered, and either way it was going to come back to one or the two of us anyway. So what we were really short then was just actually designers, helping, just that client liaison, supplier liaison, even just like sampling for projects. It was getting to the point before I had Jessie where it's like, the day was just getting longer and longer. I was like, we're going to run out of hours in the day for me to be at my desk ordering things and getting, and it just wasn't practical. So Jessie was full-time, and then we brought Chesky on like part-time because she was working in Hereford and she was living in London. So she would do like 2 days in Hereford and then 3 days in London and then travel around in between. And then we brought on a third designer, full-time again, Bronwyn. So she was with us. And then at that point, then we're definitely covered on the design front. But then I felt like we were really short on the kind of project side, like project management. So not necessarily the business side, but actually logistic. Once you take on that many designers and you can cover that many more projects, then who is actually in charge of making sure things are getting to the right places and contractors are being liaised with and that position. So then we took on Kevin, and he was our like full-time just project management, which was amazing. And he covered all the projects, and he was super efficient and very good at just managing people and things, which was amazing. So yeah, that was kind of that was the way in which it grew.
So in terms of projects, did you start in your local area, and or were you open to everyone?
Yeah, we just said we worked everywhere and anywhere. So when we first started, it was all residential.
Mm-hmm.
Then locally to us, it was actually my old school announced that they were opening a boarding house. And so I went to see the school. I said, look, I think you probably need an interior designer to help do this. It happened to be also about 3 miles away from my house. And I said, I think you need an interior designer. And of course the school went, that's a bit extravagant. I don't think we do. But thank you for coming to see us. I was like, excellent. And I said, no, I totally get it. Like, it seems like an unnecessary expense when you're buying a building. I said, but there will come a time not long from now where someone at school is going to have to find out or answer or decide what colour the walls are, what flooring you're using, what beds you're buying, where the curtain's coming from. And I'm like, and I don't know who's going to be doing that because, you know, people have jobs at schools that are not being interior designers. I was like, but that's what we do. So just so you know, that's what we do. And about a year later, they rang me and they said, okay, fine. How can you help us? And I said, this is how we can help you. And so we helped them with the whole boarding house. So that was the first boarding house we did, which was amazing. It was amazing for me because it was my old school. And it was amazing kind of locality wise and everything else. And also the brief was kind of country style hotel type thing. But also, you know, we had to then balance that against kind of cost and budget and, you know, regulations and everything else that is entailed in that kind of a public space. So it was a great project. And then from there, we got some other school projects. So then we were doing really 50-50 residential and then schools. And that's like boarding schools and actual school buildings, classrooms, that kind of thing.
Were they profitable projects as well?
Yeah, they were good projects for us, really, because they're good in terms of timings. So they're quite quick turnaround. Right. So, you know, within reason, if the schools like what you're showing them, that, you know, you don't have to have that 9-week conversation about the colour blue, which, you know, whilst we are happy to do that, and that is why we're here, that is not a very cost-effective way of running a business.
Yeah.
Whereas we find with the schools, you know, they're on tighter timelines. So you work harder because things have to be done and they have to be done on time. You know, they can only install during the holidays. So if you miss deadlines with suppliers and stuff like that, it is quite high stress. But great to just get a project. You know, in an ideal world, all projects would be, you know, 0 to 4 months, design, install, finish, done, but they aren't that often. But with the schools, you know, we really compress that timeline.
So what would you say would be the total running time?
We can go from like 0 to 6 months, like 6 months, just whole boarding house done.
Done, okay.
Just done.
So the design has to be done.
Yeah, so they'll get us in really late. So the architects will have been working on it for 3 years, and then they'll go in. It tends to run, they will contact us. We've had definitely contact from schools in March about to start the Easter holidays. And they say, so we're opening this in September. I say, okay, so you've ordered all your beds? No. Okay. They were like, we thought we could start putting stuff in Easter. I was like, well, Easter is in 2 weeks. So nothing's going to be made in that time. Because, you know, we can't just buy a normal bed. It's got to be up to regulation. There's, you know, boarding school standards, regulations as well. There's all kinds of best practice that we want to be putting into, you know, we don't want to be buying IKEA beds. That's not what we do. So yeah, busy. And that's generally, it tends to be March, you know, the phones start ringing March, April, and it's always for a September opening. Always. But it's fine. It's fine. We love it.
and because you do both private clients.
Yes.
Also, so which one do you think in terms of process is a little bit more, no, I will not say complicated, I will say a little bit
I'd say
complicated, challenging.
Challenging. So I think the thing with residential is when we're working with a residential client, we're generally building their dream homes, aren't we? So we're not just going to say, oh, well, okay, we'll just go with this.
Yeah.
Whereas we find for the commercial, for us, the real crux of it is it's got to be delivered on time, and nobody is going to be upset if a lamp is slightly the wrong colour, if it's lighting a room where it needs to be lit. And we make those compromises, and people will run with them because the alternative is not an option. But with residential, especially usually the projects we're working on, these are homes that people are investing in because they're planning on being there forever. So they are going to have an opinion on where a spotlight goes within 10 and 15 centimetres. So that means just the detail that has to go into things is just so layered that the process becomes not unwieldy, but it becomes bigger. And, there's a lot of checking and a lot of making sure and a lot of on-site visits to say, well, we talked about this, but do we mean this? Let alone if they're also doing big renovation, not just redecoration and simply, actually moving walls, actually putting in doors. What does that look like? And then, it becomes design by committee slightly, which we try and avoid, but sometimes is inevitable. So I'd say that is definitely, that takes up more of my brain power than the commercial is, just because there's less people involved generally, because, people are not going to get involved in our space, whereas residentially everyone is involved in that.
And because we mentioned you use quite bold colors, and we love colors. So as you know, I'm passionate about colors.
Yeah.
So the colors you actually use in private residential, you're probably not going to use exactly the same kind of bolds in the commercial point of
exactly,
view.
not as
so
much.
So how do you moderate your love for that kind of
into the commercial space?
Yeah.
So we'll tend to just slightly tone it down, because it's not just for one person.
Exactly.
It's for however it's for multiple people at one time, and then multiple people over a 10-year period. So I think realistically you have to think more timeless and less, if I've got a private client and they hate blue, we're not going to put blue in there. If we decide, it's going to be blue, it's probably going to be blue. And someone would have to really, really have a serious issue to go against that. And, we know the kind of base colours in general that will work well. And also that we can achieve a look that looks more expensive than it is within a constrained budget. I would love to do everything, puce and, sage green. But realistically, those combinations, when we start looking at fabrics, are going to be higher end, more expensive fabrics. So we've got to almost from the outset be clear which bit of colour we can use while still maintaining that kind of country look. And that will dictate more to us than someone saying, well, I hate that colour. Well, you might not like that colour, but that is the best look for you with that colour. We've never had it though, luckily. Nobody's ever hated the colours.
I guess you have to also take in consideration maybe these disabilities as well that people have.
Yeah, so we've got to be really aware of accessibility. We've got to be aware of, the commercial requirements take a priority for us in those projects over like our creative design, joy, what we want to do. That said, there's so many good options out there if you can just look at the scheme as a whole. So like we always say, we can buy the same office chairs you buy now, but instead of you buying them in that, airport royal blue colour that everyone has, you can buy them in, I don't know, this kind of yellow wheaty colour, which you think looks really bizarre. But when we put that with a really nice kind of natural carpet and a nicer off-green curtain, that creates like a really homely, warm look. Your ugly blue chair won't go in with that. It just doesn't work. But when you see it on a catalogue, it looks awful. That just looks like a kind of straw-coloured ugly seat. But when you see it in the right context with everything else, suddenly it fits into the scheme and it's the same cost, but it just doesn't look commercial anymore. It looks like a residential space. And I hope that's the leap we manage to take clients on, for them to understand how we can be in budget but look higher end and look more residential, because particularly for the boarding schools, you know, nobody wants it to look like a commercially.
Yeah, exactly. More homey.
It needs to be home. It needs to be like a residential design, but a commercial design on the residential side, certainly. Yeah.
And how did you go about setting prices and pricing strategies for both of these type of projects?
Yeah, they're
tricky question.
So
it's a hot question.
It's a hot question. So we've always worked on a fixed design fee, and we do that residentially and commercially, because I just don't feel like anyone is happy with a kind of hourly rate. Oh, you've asked me a question, now I'm going to bill you for it. I know people work on that. I just can't work on that. I feel like I'd always either we'd not be getting paid properly for what we do, or we'd be overcharging people to find something. You know, the reality is it can take 8 hours to find a sofa, and I just don't think
that we understand as well, to be
honest.
honest.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think clients want to pay that, and I don't want them having to have something because it's the first thing we found. So we work on the basis that we are going to lose some of those in our time, but other things we know are really good. And if we know they're good and they're proven and we know they'll fit in the scheme, then we make it up on something else, because, you know, it's give or take. So we set a fixed fee for the scope, which means we properly scope a project before we price it. You know, we're not able to give someone a price over the phone, because everyone will tell you they've got a 4-bedroom house and they don't need much doing. What is the price? Like, it doesn't matter. That's what everyone will tell you. How much does it cost? Well, well, I'm not really doing anything. Okay. And then you turn up, they're like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just painting it and some new curtains. But what we were thinking was that we would move the kitchen downstairs. But just apart from that, just the painting. So we always make sure we get a really thorough brief, and having learned from experience, we now are much stricter at identifying a change of scope partway through a project. And then whilst the fixed fee isn't, that fixed fee still covers that scope, if we have to bring in another fee because actually the scope has crept so far, we'll say, you know, it's really thorough what this includes. This now doesn't include that. And we've never had someone go, well, that's ridiculous, you know, because people know that sometimes they don't realize they want to change something until you're into the project. So they might say, well, yeah, I didn't think we'd be able to do that, or I never thought about doing that, or we'd like to do that now. And we'll go, that's fine. It'll be this much for us to be fully involved in that, or you just take it away and do it.
Yeah.
So...
But that makes sense, right? Because sometimes during the project, things can change. So.
Exactly. I mean, I'm trying to think of a really good example. I probably can't think of a really good example. But things like maybe, you know, an outdoor space. So that was never included. We never had even stepped outside. But then all of a sudden, you know, it happens that something was built and there was a new garage. And actually it makes sense to do that with the boot room or something like that. And we'll just say that's fine. But this is the extra bill for that. And, you know, if they're working with us and they're happy to work with us.
And what about project coordination? Do you charge that per hour, or is it still a fixed fee?
So if we do design only, there's no project management for that. When we do, but very rarely are we design only. We work with a couple of building contractors where we do design only, and we will literally give them a scheme. And then they will spec it, they will execute it, they will install it. So that's where we do kind of no project management. If we're doing supply, which we do a lot of, you know, as a primary supplier, we add 10% on over trade. So clients will get the trade price. We'll add 10% as part of our procurement fee, organising fee. If clients want like a full turnkey service, so that's us having it all in, you know, storing it, getting it all to them on day one, then we will definitely charge a project management on top of that. So between 10 and 20%, depending on the gig, depending on how complicated it is, what needs to be done. And when we're managing trades, so we have our own kind of trades. So we've got carpet fitters that work just with us, decorators that work just with us, and we've got contractor in London, contractor in Herefordshire, we will add on a project management fee to use them. And, you know, we just say that's just how we have to work. Otherwise, we'd spend our whole, you know, I mean, everyone knows it's hard work.
Yeah.
Just all that liaison piece needs to be included.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd just be up all night, which we still are, but we wouldn't be getting paid. You know, it's just part, you know, it's just how it is. And we, you know, I think clients understand. I mean, the more you hear about crazy contractors, you know, letting clients down, I know the contractors we work with are brilliant, so they can work with us or not work with us. You know, we don't have a problem with them working with other contractors, but we're not going to manage them, and we're not. So you will have to speak to them when they don't turn up on a Tuesday.
But you're gonna deliver a full packages so they actually can easily execute a design.
Exactly.
So.
And you know, clients generally are time poor, and they're happy to pay us for that, you know, unenviable task of liaising and managing contractors, which is just an endless job.
Yeah. And you do projects in London as well?
We do, yes.
So it's mostly property, residential property?
Yeah, residentials generally,
And do you find a difference, because most of the houses you do as well in the countryside, do you find any difference? I know it's the same, very close, but there's any differences that you noticed?
There's ongoing issues like friction in London that does not exist where we are, for things like parking, traffic, all those kind of things, which possibly Londoners just, it's live, absolutely live. If I have to bring trades from Herefordshire to London, that is not only the journey, which is kind of 4.5 hours, but it's just the constant additional issues of where you can park your van, where you can unload your van, where you can put a skip, all those kind of things that are, I mean, it's just not London, it's all cities. It's just we work so rurally that everywhere we go, you know, there's space for 20 vans. You know, it just isn't an issue to us. So we have to remember sometimes where we're working and what we're doing, and really, you know, switch on to that level of friction that just doesn't exist for us in the countryside. we can kind of...
It's such a much calmer pace, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Everything's calmer. You have a lot more time to think about stuff. Everyone's much more chilled out. And then, I have to flick a switch when I get into Paddington on the train, or get through to the A4. The flyover, and suddenly realise, right, okay, now you're back in the real world. not sleepy Herefordshire. But...
I watched you on Interior Design Masters.
Oh, lucky you.
And how was that experience? And did that generate any business for you?
No, absolutely not. So I was approached just at that point where I was kind of, well, I'd left the army, but I was actually already had two designers working for me. We were in Herefordshire, and I was approached just out of the blue. Would you like to be on this TV show? It's going to be like MasterChef The Professionals, but for interior designers. We love your work. We love everything you do. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I spoke to my husband and said, you should just do it. Just like, you know, just do it. You might not even, because they said, oh, we need to screen test you. We need to do all this stuff. I was like, okay, fine. Let's go through this process. And got through a few phone calls, and then got through a few more phone calls, and then some Zoom calls. And then they said, right, you're in. Come. It's 10. So it was 8 weeks. 8 weeks shooting on 8 weeks, on for a week, off for a week, on for a week, off for a week, for 16 weeks. Wow. So it was a big commitment. Yep. And I was like, okay, well, let's just see how it goes. And so it seemed like that would be quite exciting. They were like, they're going to be all these top judges. You're going to be learning all the way through. It's going to be amazing. And I thought, you know, at the time I was just doing anything and everything I could do anyway. But then we had lots of projects on. So I thought, right, we'll just do it, and, you know, it'll be fine. And as soon as I got there on the first day, they said, oh, well, we're going to go in and, you know, introduce you to everyone. And I walked into a huge studio with about, I think, 8 or 9 cameras. And you're all mic'd up, and they went, this is Verity, and she's an army officer. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I was, but now I'm not. So, well, for the purposes of the show, we're going to say you're an army officer. And I just thought, oh, gosh. And everyone started arriving, and people were not interior designers. And after kind of day 1, week 1, I went to speak to him. I said, look, I don't think this is really what I thought it was. Like, I can't really do this because I've got paying clients, so I can't be on this show and pretend I'm not an interior designer because I'm an army officer, because I'm not, and I am an interior designer. They're like, yeah, it's fine, no one will know. You're just, we'll just say you're an army officer, it'll be fine. And so I tried to leave, but they wouldn't let me. And then luckily I went week 3. But the whole process was mad. It's TV, and TV is mad. And I think I probably knew that, but I hadn't really appreciated that. So it was pretty fun. Like, doing it was fun. But, at the time I had a 3-year-old at home and, a 4-year-old at home. So my husband kind of had to hold the fort. And then people were having to do work when I wasn't there. And I was trying to answer work calls. And you're mic'd up for 14 hours a day while they're kind of shouting at you and trying to throw all these issues in. I think one day they came in and went, oh my gosh, Verity, your room's really yellow. Did you think it would be that yellow? I went, well, yes, because I chose the paint. And they were like, yeah, we were hoping you might be really surprised because it's really bright. I said, well, it is quite bright now, but we haven't got anything else in the room. They're like, okay, because 3 of the other guys are all crying in their rooms because the colour is not right. So could that maybe happen to you? I was like, no. So I didn't really, I wasn't really in the right place to be doing that show. But it was the first series, so you know, if I'd seen the show now and someone and actually amusingly, I have been rung about 6 more times. Would you like to be on the show? We love your work. I was on the show. I was on the show. So that really kind of puts you down to earth that it's not really about your designs. Yeah. I mean, we do occasionally still get calls from people saying, oh, would you be able to do a room for? Because I think the budget was like £700, £800. I was like, not really. No.
It's my consultation fee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, maybe I could come and speak to you for that. So it's quite funny. But I did, from the back of that, having been on that show, I then did another show with the BBC, which was like renovating people's bed and breakfasts. And that was called My Unique B&B. And that was super fun. I mean, and that was really on really tight budgets. There was a carpenter, a couple of carpenters, and then I was the designer, and they had a couple of designers over the shows, so 3 designers over all the shows. And that was super fun, and I quite enjoyed that. But again, not really interior design, but still fun.
Did you steal some contractors from this?
I did meet, so my decorator I met on the show. So I always say one of the best things that came out of the show was I met a very good decorator. And he is great, and we still work together. So yeah, it's not all bad. And you know, everyone on the show is amazing, you know.
It just doesn't show the reality of the job.
No, it doesn't. It's not what interior design does. And I know, you know, having spoken at length about this to various people, the problem is I just think it probably maybe isn't a good TV show. You know, people, it's very niche in the end what interior design is, and how interested are people. You know, things that stress us out probably don't stress most people out. You know, a lamp being the wrong colour, or the wrong plug on it, or being late, or it's such a big picture of so many little things, and the things that push interior designers over the edge probably is hard to capture on a show, I would imagine, which is why they haven't done it. But I hope we could get close there, because people love to see projects and building.
I know.
People love grand designs. Yeah. People love all that. So I don't know. I hope. I live in hope.
I think grand design is more authentic because they really show the struggle, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think, you know, all projects to some extent go through that. And, you know, it's constant problem solving, and it's constant having to make things work when the goalposts change. And I just think in general, that's what interior designers do really well. More, I think, and they're more flexible and fluid than other trades within the whole building trade.
Where all the other trades, they ask you.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
solve the
It's always your problem, isn't it? It's always your
Exactly.
problem. Which way is it, you know, and how many other people get asked about, you know, the tile detail in the bathroom, but also like the front doorknob. Not many people, you know, what colour should we paint the windows? It's all those people do their own little jobs, but we have to have an opinion and have some impact on all of them.
And talking about problem solving, what is the challenge that you can remember that really make a difference? The bigger challenge you had and say, okay, I had to sort it out.
Biggest. Let's have a think.
I know that some of those are quite big. Anyway,
Yeah, no, I know. I'm sure. I mean, it
get
feels
quite
like
a few,
every
but-
day there are big challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single day. I think
Probably
probably
the one you struggle the most.
what I struggle with the most is suppliers not delivering on time. And good suppliers and reliable suppliers, probably through no fault of their own, but not being able to deliver something that we need and that was promised.
Yeah.
And, I totally understand that, the person I'm probably going to be shouting at to the phone is not the person who makes that chair. I do understand that. But, we're the ones left. And I find, particularly trade to trade, B2B, well, I'm really sorry. Yeah, but it'll be there next week. Yeah, but we literally need it now. What do you want me to say? I still struggle with that, and I'm still have
I'm
to.
with
You
you
can't
with that.
control that.
You can't control it, and you
No.
can't do anything, and you can't help. And how many times can you say to the same client, "It's coming this week"? Oh, I'm really sorry, it's not coming, because that's what you're being told. And you can even build in. Well, and we try. So what we've tried to do to counter that is, if we're told 4 to 6 weeks, we'll say 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But
Just in
how many?
case.
You can't keep everlasting deadlines. I mean, we've had a supplier recently who honestly said, "Well, we just don't know when." Well, what? Like never? Like at some point between now and the end of the world? Like you've got to
Have you
give
not
me a
done
date.
this before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to give me a date. We did have something, about 2 years ago. And I think it was a 18-week lead time on something. I think it was upholstery. And that was fine. 18 weeks is 18 weeks. And then at 20 weeks, we said, when is it coming? Well, these things take time. Yeah, we know they take time. And you've had 20 weeks of that time. Well, it's near Christmas now, so it'll probably be January. We're like, it's November. It's not near Christmas. It's November. There's another 6 weeks till Christmas. So, that's what I
Do you
struggle
find
with.
it after you have these problems with the trades, you're trying to cut the trades that to make you
Yeah,
your
I
life
have
a
to
little
try.
bit more
Sometimes we have to
problematic?
just stop working with
Yeah.
suppliers if I can't.
Yeah.
If the reason is just, oh, we're really sorry it's late, because you can't count. Yeah, you can't put
Count on
in
those,
an
yeah.
alternative for that. So, well, I'm going to have to go with someone either who tells me longer but will deliver it in that time, or who just is going to keep delivering on that time.
Yeah,
And I
just
think,
think
you know,
that during COVID or after
Yeah.
COVID, things have changed so much, and services become worse. Or I don't know if
Like
it's
we
just
have this
me,
conversation
but
every week in the office. It just seems like, people are still saying, oh, well, COVID. No, I don't think that tree was even being grown
Yeah.
that you're using during COVID to make my chair. Can you
Yeah.
it feels like people just say, well, before stuff didn't get delivered, so now it's not going to get delivered. I just can't. We are just not moving forward. We just won't. We'll deal with them once, because sometimes you're too far in to pull back. But
and the thing is that for you, that client is super important. Whether for them you are just
one of many.
Yeah.
Designers buying stuff, loads, and I have had, it's not even that big a order. I get it. It probably isn't the biggest order on your workshop, but it's important to us that we get this again. And I say it flippantly, but equally, I was working in a place where things were life and death, and I know no one's going to die if they don't get this dining chair. But the point is, we had a deal, and you know, I paid you a lot of money, and you said you were going to make this, and we agreed a time, and now you're just going, oh well. Never mind. Don't worry about. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, my hands are tied. If someone says that to me, they automatically.
How do you manage those challenging
that's
conversations?
the reaction I have as well. Sorry. It's when you put the phone down and say,
Yeah. What can you say?
No, I mean, like, how do you manage the conversation with the client when that happens?
So I think the only thing you can do is be honest with the client and just say, this is my fault because I told you to buy this thing and I found them for you. I am doing my best to get a date from you. We have had to, just put our hands in our pockets and pay out for things like temporary chairs for jobs, because the chairs that were spec'd and should be there are not there. I'm really sorry you don't have any chairs in your conference room for the foreseeable future. You know, everyone's been working to this deadline. You've got a really important meeting. Well, I'm going to have to get you some chairs then. I'm like, these aren't the chairs, but you're going to have the chairs. So, you know, if we have to, that's where we have to go. And you hope, and we've always been on the right side of it, that, you know, clients appreciate the position you're in because you work with them long enough, and they know you will always try and deliver stuff that it's beyond your problem. But it's difficult, isn't it? And nobody, you know, we don't want to be doing a job where we end up paying for the job because you're let down by someone else. So that's not that. I'm not sure it's the best solution. It's the solution I've come up with, but I don't know that it's the best solution. Yeah. You know, John Lewis wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. You know, they would, you know, if you're waiting for a sofa, they're not going to give you another sofa because you're annoyed.
It's all about, you know, whether you want to establish a really you know, good relationship
and
with
maintain that relationship and
Yeah.
carry on working with them, and, you know, them not to lose faith in you. That's what you want. You know, what we always strive for is that our clients finish a project and want to work with us again and want to tell other people about us. Exactly. And I think it's you know, it's never the good stuff. It's always when it goes wrong is really where you have to show people what you're made of. I think.
Up,
yeah, that's when you have to step up. Everyone can do a good job when everything's going well.
Yeah,
because that's kind of the management part of the business. So how do you balance the creative side that everything is perfect
and beautiful?
Yeah, I did this beautiful design. Client's really happy, and then something happens like this that just one surprise let you down, and everything. Well, that's the last thing that people remember.
Yeah, I do think you're only as good as what you can deliver, and in the end, being creative is wonderful, and we're very lucky we get to see beautiful things. But I always feel like really the emphasis isn't on that, because it is only as good as what you can deliver. So if you can make something beautiful, but if it's not, you know, and that's something we've had to really be clear with clients, and actually, you know, within our team, you can create the most beautiful thing in the world, but if we can't deliver it for cost, or we can't deliver it because, you know, they've told us they need to be in by this date, and we know that's a 28-week lead time, if we can't deliver it, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. You know, I can build you the Taj Mahal if you give me an endless budget and 1 million people to build it, but we've all got, there are always constraints. Nobody has endless budget, endless time. So however creative you are, unless it's backed up with something that's actually deliverable, there's no point to it, really. Yeah.
And I guess the client also remembers more of the process and the experience and the journey.
Well, they're living it, aren't they? They're living it. So if you really mess something up, or they have a really miserable time doing something, you know, they're going to remember that forever. They're going to always walk into that room. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. Yeah. If it took them 3 years to get the curtains, they're going to know that.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just a design; it's the experience that
it is. We work in a service industry. What we're delivering is a service, not a room. Yeah. Because you can go in and buy a room, but it's service. You know,
it's much more. Yeah.
Yeah. It isn't just the end result. It's how you get there.
Yeah. But we don't forget who you are, mother, as well.
Yeah.
So how an average...
My children might forget who their mother is occasionally.
How an average Verity day looks like.
It's busy. It's busy,
right?
So we're lucky that the studio now is in town, walking distance from my children's school. So that has been really brilliant. So it means we can get them in school every day. After school, they can come back to the studio. Great, they love it. No, but they can. You know, we've got space there. So average day is leave the house.
What time? What time do you get up?
So we're. I am not an early riser. I never have been. Even 12 years in the army couldn't make me an early riser. My husband is very good in the mornings. My children love an early morning. I do not. So the rest of the house, I would say, are up about 6:45. Okay. I'm up near 7:15. Yeah, I'm more of a night owl, I always think. We leave the house at 8. If we leave after 8, everything is done. So we're in the car for 8, children, dogs, you know, every piece of kit, which when your children play instruments and play hockey and rugby and everything else, the whole car is full. So we're in the car, school drop off before 8:30, in the office probably for 8:45. So I can get I love being in the office before anyone else is in there. So it's just quiet, just me. And generally now, and I think it's a post-COVID thing, the phones don't even start ringing until about 9:30. You can't get hold of anyone before 9:30. So get a good 45 minutes in the office. Then generally we try and keep mornings free from appointments so that we can actually work, because I do feel like sometimes we just spend the whole day hosting reps. And whilst I love to see stuff, I can't sell any stuff if we're just constantly seeing more things. So we try and keep mornings free to just actually work, day-to-day work, chasing things, designing things, all that good stuff. And then after lunch, we take appointments when we can, or we're off on site visits. So that's like a day when I'm in Herefordshire. Then, children get picked up at various times, around between 4 and 6 probably. Then get taken to their various clubs or sporting activities, which I also, because we're in town, stay in the office a bit longer. So, at least 2 or 3 times a week, I'm probably in the office till 7:30-ish. Then eventually back home. Back home, get home, do all the things that you do at home if we ever remember what a house looks like. And then get ready for the next day, which is like that. So generally, try and work it around seeing the children as much as possible in between all their various things. But then obviously, like days like today when I'm in London, either it's train early morning, or yesterday it was driving up yesterday, staying over because I've got a couple of things on, and then seeing clients. So try and squeeze as much into a day when I'm not in Hereford as possible.
Yep.
And then if my husband's working away, then we've got to, rely on grandparents and anyone really that will take my children. Anyone. Can anyone take them? And the dog. And the dog.
Any volunteers.
Any volunteers. Yeah, my 9-year-old's like, we could probably look after ourselves. I was like, you probably could, but I'm not sure the driving bit would work. Yeah. So yeah, just busy. And, if you're running your own business, you're busy anyway. Yeah. But, it is what it is. And I think, I don't know, my husband and I were both in the army, so we know what it's like not to be able to run your own timelines. And I feel like we're just as busy as we are, but we can at least make those decisions ourselves. We're very rarely in a position where we have to say, absolutely can't do that because of we're able to deconflict stuff, which helps. We just have to always be busy.
What keeps you motivated when you obviously run such a sort of hectic and busy life?
Yeah, I know, it's difficult, isn't it? Why? I love it. I love being busy. I like seeing the progress. Sometimes I think it's really easy, especially when you're in your own business, to kind of look at the negatives and look at the downsides and just think, I don't know why, and I do. We often joke, you get more money working in Tesco's, day to day, and you can just leave when your shift finishes and just sit and watch telly, and that is not an option for what we're doing. But if you look back, things like even our conversation today, where you start, where you get to, the bits in between, it's great and it's lovely and it's an amazing space to work in terms of the industry and all the people that work in it. I enjoy it. On a daily basis, I enjoy it. There are not many days where I think, God, this is awful. And I think maybe when you have more of those than the days you enjoy, you probably need to take a look at it. But yeah at the moment, more good days than bad days, for sure.
Well, thanks for sharing all your stories and experiences.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed our conversation, feel free to share it with your friends. And if you wish to dive deeper into the business of interior design, we invite you to join our membership community at businessandinteriors.com. Until next time.